Okay, this is Marla, and in an earlier video, I kind of alluded that the freedom of religion, parents have the absolute right to train their children in the way they should go, and I just wanted to read a little bit on Amendment Number 1, where it embodies free speech and freedom of religion. We're going to focus on freedom of religion. Because the Warren Court kind of like skewed everything with the secular religion that we have. And this wall of separation, they just misconstrued and messed everything up, really. After this reading, I will read up on what the Founding Fathers said in their arguments in the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. So, but that's in another one. So first we're going to read from a book that I have on the establishment of religion, freedom of religion, and what it really means. So Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people to peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So today, I wanted to mention a little bit, get off course a moment. I took my son and we went over to see the little protest that the high school students had against Tay. It was a peaceful assembly, and they were petitioning the government, the board of the school board, for the redress of grievances toward Tay Anderson over a student or some students. I'm not sure. I have not read the whole report, so I don't have time. I homeschool in the morning, so we made it there late, and I just wanted to show Isaac what a peaceful protest looked like. That is a sharp contrast to the protest that was handled last summer during COVID with, the A and the BLM and the Antifa. Anyways, I'm not going to go on there because I don't want to be canceled over here. But I'm not going to talk about that. But anyways, so in Amendment 1, there's two clauses. The religious freedom and the freedom of speech are right there first. Why would they do that? Have you ever thought about it? Anyways, in the Warren Court, they were really, what it seems like, is that they were addressing the respecting and establishment of religion. No, they were addressing, because it says two. So it's like no law, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So Congress can't make a law favoring a religion or prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Okay? So I question, because when you remove the Bible from schools and you disallow the Bible from being read as literature, what you're doing is you are prohibiting the ability of students to understand the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Because this amendment is related to what happened and why the Founding Fathers put it here in the first place. In the first place, America was 99% Protestant and 1% Catholic. There were 13 colonies, 13 states, and Maryland was the only state that was practicing Catholics. The bishop who was given land by the previous king before the tyrant king, a previous king, and he was a noble, and he gave, he pretty much said you could have this land to practice. So Catholics, this was the only land that the Catholics were allowed to practice before the Revolution. So this amendment is related to the fact that Catholics and a lot of pagans and other worshipers were not allowed to practice, and there was a lot of division in society because of religion. And so they wanted to make sure that the government can't impose, like the King of England did, and take away and strip the land away from the Catholics. Because that's what happens. A couple of Protestants from Virginia, Williamsburg, Virginia, they came and they snatched under the tyrant king, they snatched the land from the Catholics, and they were no longer able to practice their religion. They had no land. So everything from there on out was, until the Revolution, was underground. So Catholics were homeschooling their kids and teaching their kids the faith. So I wanted to say that first, and now we're going to turn over to the freedom from and of religion. Okay, so religious freedom is guaranteed in two opening clauses of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. What does that mean? Together, the clauses guarantee freedom from and of religion by pointing in opposite directions. So, remember, in those times, Catholics and many pagans and many other religions that were non-Christian were unable to practice their religion. Okay? It was the Protestants who were practicing religion and restricting freedom to worship. The Establishment Clause points towards the principle of separation of government from religion. Neither should it involve itself with the other. But this is a mistake. The church can tell government and hold them accountable for their actions, but government cannot impose on the church. The Free Exercise Clause suggests a principle of voluntarism, freedom from coercion in choosing a religion or no religion. Religious freedom has never been absolute. This is a mistake. Religious freedom, while I agree that it has never been absolute because the king was being oppressive, the English king was being oppressive. So it wasn't absolute to that king. But freedom of religion is absolute under Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ gives you free will to follow him or not follow him. So this freedom of religion is absolute in the Constitution. Freedom of religion comes from God. It is here before the government ever started, and therefore the government cannot take it away. So it's absolute. The First Amendment, as the court observed in Kentwell versus Connecticut, the 310 U.S. 296, 1940, embraces two concepts: freedom to believe and freedom to act. Okay? So, conduct remains subject to regulation of society. So, conduct remains subject to regulation of society. So, Tay's conduct is regulated by society. So whatever society, not the students, it's the parents. The parents enroll the students in schools. So they should be consulted on the conduct of Tate Anderson. Drawing on the distinction between belief and action, the court thus wrote into constitutional law a third principle of religious freedom that runs back to Thomas Jefferson, who was only writing a letter to a friend and explaining this point, who, in his bill for establishing religious freedom for the state of Virginia in 1779, observed that the acts of the body, unlike the operations of the mind, are subject to the coercion of laws. Okay, so let's read that again. The acts of the body, unlike the operations of the mind, so the acts of the body, unlike the operations of the mind, are subject to the coercion of laws. Nor does the text and historical record of the First Amendment provide simple interpretive solution for the continuing controversies in constitutional politics over religious freedom. What is an establishment of religion, for example, and what is the law respecting the establishment of religion? What is and how and who defines religion? God does. God defines religion. God. The church defines religion. Jesus' church. The Jewish church. Many of the contemporary disputes over separation of government and religion, moreover, could not have been foreseen during the founding period. I think they did foresee it. They were brilliant men. There was no controversy over school prayer because there was no system of public education. That is true. Everybody homeschooled, and parents, they chose the right direction and the right education for their children. I'm telling you, the parent rights for education are embodied in the Religious Freedom Clause. It is a parent's primary duty to train up their children in the way they should go, not the schools. The traditions and aspirations of religious freedom from the colonial through the revolutionary period and to the time of the First Amendment was adopted and ratified in 1791 were complex and occasionally contradicting. They weren't that complex. Although populated by many escaping religious persecutions in England or on the European continent, colonial settlements remained religious enclaves discriminating against those of other faiths. In Massachusetts, the established Congregational Church taxed and harassed Quakers, Baptists, and others, and the king double taxed and harassed Catholics in Maryland. As the colonies developed and their leaders moved towards the Declaration of Independence, religious freedom grew and began to take on a new meaning. With the conceptual change came a rejection of the European understanding of established church-state. England, Scotland, and Germany had established churches, while the Roman Catholic Church was established in Italy, Spain, and elsewhere. But in 1774, when the British Parliament passed a statute establishing both Anglicanism and Catholicism in Canada, the Continental Congress protested with astonishment that a British Parliament should ever consent to establish in the country a religion that has deluged England in blood and dispersed bigotry, persecution, murder, and rebellion through every part of the world. In England, if you were not the religion of the king, you were persecuted. And Catholics suffered. Queen Mary of Scots was a Catholic, and she was beheaded by her cousin in England. By 1770, the original 13 colonies, always predominantly Protestant, were on their way to a new form of establishment, unlike the European single-state church domination. So England had a church-state domination over their religion that is still going on till today. Christianity or Protestantism, in contrast with Judaism, Islam, and Hinduism, as well as for some colonists, Catholicism was established in the northern colonies but allowed for multiple churches and denominations. Maryland's Declaration of Rights in 1776, for instance, recognized the religious freedom of persons professing the Christian religion. In 1778, South Carolina Constitution proclaimed that the Christian Protestant religion shall be deemed the established religion of this state. Notably, 4 colonies, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey, never established a state religion. In the 1770s, Patrick Henry reflected these changes and championed non-preferentialism, that is, no government aid for particular religions, but supported for all religions. Non-preferentialism, however, fell out of favor in 1790s and early 19th century as states abandoned established churches and religions, as well as religious qualifications for holding state office. Religious freedom found expression in Article 6 of the Constitution, providing that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification for any office or public trust under the United States. But that was not enough to silence critics, pressing for the addition of a Bill of Rights. Catholics were not able to vote, nor were Jewish people in this country, only the Protestants. So this Article 6 helped a ton. When defending the Constitution during Virginia's ratifying convention on June 12, 1788, Madison thought to reassure those fearing government would deny religious freedom. Madison thought to reassure those fearing government would deny religious freedom. And I will say right here that Madison's fears are pretty accurate, as he did foresee that government, he did foresee the future. And you can say that government is denying religious freedom, especially with COVID. If there was a majority of one sect, a Bill of Rights would be a poor protection of liberty. Happily, for the states, they enjoy the utmost freedom of religion. This freedom arises from the multiplicity of sects which pervades America. There are a lot of different religions here in America today, as there were back then. For where there is such a variety of sects, there cannot be a majority of any one sect to oppress and persecute the rest. And you could say that secularism is now a religion the government has created. Okay, a particular state might concur in one religious project, but the United States abound in such a variety of sects that it is a strong security against religious persecution, and it is sufficient to authorize a conclusion that no one sect will ever be able to outnumber or depress the rest. And I would say that the sect of atheism is outnumbering and depressing the Christian and the Jewish religion. I would say that atheism has dominated and has created a new religion called the secular religion, the no religion. Madison failed to dissuade those seeking further protection for religious freedom. While ratifying the Constitution, the Virginia Convention proposed the addition of a Bill of Rights, including the following: that religion or the duty which we owe to our Creator and the manner of discharge, it can be directed only by reason and conviction, not by force or violence, and therefore all men have an equal, natural, and unalienable right to the free exercise of religion. That includes atheism, no religion. According to the dictates of conscience, and that no particular religious sect or society ought to be favored or established by law in preference of another. And I would say that the secular religion is a preference, which is no religion, is a preference, and it was established by the government of the United States or of each state. And that is what they're teaching in schools. And I would say that the secular religion is the evolution of man. That is acting as there is no religion and you evolved from a monkey. You evolved from animals. That is a secular preference of government. And that was established, an established law in government by not allowing the Bible, by not allowing schools to teach history correctly. We have officially established a religion. Defenders of religious freedom, however, were not of one mind. Some maintained that this establishment of church and state was necessary to safeguard religion. Really, I think that religion is under fire right now from the coercive influence of politics. So, safeguard religion. It was necessary to safeguard religion from the coercive influence of politics. Well, yeah, politics right now is religion is not being safeguarded. And schools are teaching against religion. And they're teaching favoring no religion and disregarding our Creator. When celebrating the purity of the evangelical faith in 1644, Roger Williams proclaimed that God commanded that the most paganish, Jewish, Turkish, an anti-Christian conscience and worships be granted to all men in the nation and countries. And he invoked the metaphor of a wall of separation in defense of the integrity of religion. In defense of the integrity of religion. First, the faithful labors of many witnesses of Jesus Christ extend to the world, abundantly proving that the Church of the Jews under the Old Testament in the antitype were both separate from the world, and that when they have opened a gap in the hedge or will of separation between the garden of the church and the wilderness of the world, God hath ever broke down the wall itself, removed the candlesticks, and made his garden a wilderness, as at this day. And that therefore, if he will ever please to restore his garden and paradise again, it must of necessity be walled in particularly unto himself from the world, and that all that shall be saved out of the world are to be transplanted out of wilderness of the world and added unto his church or garden. More than 150 years later, President Jefferson again relied on the metaphor of the wall of separation in his famous letter to the Danbury Baptist Association in 1802, believing with you that the religion is a matter which lies solely between man and God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legislative powers or government reach actions only and not opinions. So, the legislative powers of government reach actions only, not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Unlike those who shared Roger Williams' view, Jefferson was more concerned about insulating government from the influence of religion and religious fervor in his home state of Virginia. Jefferson had thought for religious freedom not just for Protestants or Christians. As he reflected about the opposition in 1779 to his bill of establishing religious freedom, where the preamble declares that coercion is a departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion, an amendment was proposed by inserting the word Jesus Christ, that it should read, a departure from the plan of Jesus Christ, the holy author of our religion. The insurrection was rejected by a great majority in proof that they meant to comprehend within the mantle of its protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan, the Hindu and the infidel of every denomination. James Madison argued that a wall of separation should help preserve the integrity of the government, but he also thought that it might benefit religion as well. Madison, along with Jefferson, opposed proposals to establish religious taxes in Virginia. In famous memorial and remonstrance against religious assessment in 1785, he persuasively argued against government support of religion, government assistance to religious establishment. Madison tended to divide society into factions and to produce pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in the laity, in both superstitious bigotry and persecution. Nor did Madison think government depended on the support of religion. So, religion was not to support government, and government was not to support religion monetarily. However, it is not the same to say that government should not impose on religion, but religion is the full authority in the Creator and of morals. So religion can impose their views on government, but not vice versa. That is not a just government, he wrote in 1792, in which a man's religious rights are violated by penalties or fettered by tests or taxes by a hierarchy. But Madison proved unsuccessful in persuading the First Congress that the states as well as the federal government should be barred from passing laws respecting the establishment of religion and religious freedom. On June 8, 1789, in the House of Representatives, Madison introduced a series of proposed amendments to the Constitution, among them the civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious beliefs or worship, nor shall any national religion be established. And I'm going to say right here that the government has established a national religion. That national religion is secularism, and secularism is the religion that there is no God and that we evolved from animals. Nor shall the full and equal rights of conscience be any manner or on any pretext infringed. Nor shall the full equal rights of conscience be in any manner the full and equal rights of conscience. That is, each person's conscience. Every person has free will, and every person has a right to his own mind. So that cannot be infringed. So I have the right to my own mind. You have the right to your own mind. You are free to think the way you want to think. So if you want to have a lifestyle that is LGBTQ, that is your lifestyle. So if you want to have a lifestyle in Christ, or if you want to have a lifestyle in Hinduism or whatever, that is your lifestyle, and the government cannot infringe on your right to free thinking. No state shall violate the equal rights of conscience or the freedom of the press or the trial by jury in criminal cases. So no state, none, not Colorado, not Florida, can violate the equal rights of free thinking, of conscience, or freedom of the press. Okay? No state. So Facebook Online is a state right now that is infringing on the freedom, equal rights of conscience, and the freedom of the press. Without debate, Madison's proposal were referred to a special committee of which he was a member. Within a week, the committee reported back to the full House. Madison's proposal remained intact, except for some editing. The words civil rights and national were deleted. The House devoted a single day to considering the amendment as a result of a motion by Fisher Ames and further stylistic changes, the revised amendment read, Congress shall make no law establishing religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, nor shall the rights of conscience be infringed. The House proposed amendments were debated in secret by the Senate in September. The Senate Journal, however, records 3 unsuccessful motions to change the amendment on September 3. All would have narrowed the amendment to ban establishments preferring one religious sect or society. Okay, there is a society of LGBTQ. There is a society of the religious. Okay, so they did not ban the. They narrowed the amendment to ban establishments preferring one religious sect to another society. And I would say that the government is preferring the LGBTQ society to the religious society, or any particular denomination of religion in preference to another. But 6 weeks later, the Senate voted to amend the House version to read, Congress shall make no law establishing articles of faith or mode of worship. So no law establishing articles of faith or mode of worship or prohibiting the exercise of religion. This change narrowed the religion clause to barring Congress only from endorsing a single denomination or national religion. Under it, Congress could become non-discriminatory government aid to all religion. So government can provide non-discriminatory aid. Right there, aid. So they could give back tax credits to people who take their kids out of public school and put them in a private school. Okay, so that is a non-discriminatory government aid. Tax credit to parents for removing their kids from public school is a non-discriminatory aid. But they're discriminating against parents who are religious. So if you're religious, they're barring parents from the money they provide the state from their property taxes for schools. To all religions, something Baptists bitterly opposed. The Senate's change provoked opposition in the House. A joint conference committee chaired by Madison was created to resolve the difference between the House and the Senate versions of the proposed amendments. Finally, on September 24, the House agreed to accept the Senate's version of other amendments on the condition that the amendments on religion be changed to its present form. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So, in order to understand the First Amendment, you have to know your history. Because, and knowing your history will allow you to see that the Warren Court botched everything up. The Senate agreed. Congress adopted the religious clause. And I'm going to stop right. Well, Madison's effort to guarantee the full and equal rights of conscience and to forbid the states from violating the equal rights of conscience nevertheless failed. So this conscience is the right for each person to have their own mind and to express their opinions of whatever. This is where the freedom of expression and freedom of thinking and your right to speak up come from. So medicine didn't do a very good job of persuading. States continued vestiges of establishment and restrictions on religious freedom. Massachusetts, for one, denied Jews the right to hold public office until 1828 and did not remove its final vestige of establishment until 1833. Not until Cantwell versus Connecticut in 1940 did the Hughes Court hold the Free Exercise Clause applicable to the states. In Justice Roberts' words, the 14th Amendment has rendered the legislatures of the states as incompetent as Congress to enact laws denying the free exercise of religion. 7 years later, the Vinson Court made the Establishment Clause applicable to the states in Everson versus Board of Education of Ewing Township, 1947, excerpt in this book, in which Justice Black, for a bare majority, wrote the high wall theory. And I think they screwed it up and they didn't understand the high wall theory. I don't think they understood their history. I don't know. Or they were too liberal to understand it. Of the separation of government from religion into constitutional law, but upheld the reimbursement of the costs of transporting children to private religious schools. Since Cantwell and Everson controversy has infused and surrounded the court's interpretation of the religious clause, but before turning to the court's ruling and rival interpretations of the religious clause, it may be helpful to consider two different theoretical approaches to religious freedom that have animated constitutional politics: non-preferentialism and the high wall theory of the separation of government and religion. President Ronald Reagan's Attorney General Edwin Meese III took the non-preferentialism position, advocated over 200 years ago by Patrick Henry when he advocated the First Amendment forbade the establishment of the particular religions or a particular church. It also precluded the federal government from favoring one religion or one church group over another. That's what the First Amendment did, but it did not go further. It did not, for example, preclude federal aid to religious groups, so long as that assistance furthered the public purpose, and so long as it did not discriminate in favor of one religious group against another. So you could say that the LGBTQ society is sort of a religious group. It's sort of a way of life, and you know, that's acceptable in America. So favoring money for one sect and disfavoring is discrimination, according to this text. And I'm going to stay with that unless we can argue it out and discuss it and hash out other ideas. But this is my idea, and I think that the government can give back tax credit to parents who are homeschooling because of religious. So Chief Justice Berger and Rehnquist, along with other justices, championed this view, as well as political scientist Walter Burns. There was no dispute with respect to the principles on which the Constitution is built, Burns claims, when observing that states in its most radical form, the framers, all agreed that our institutions do not presuppose a provincial supreme being. They cannot presuppose a provincial supreme being. But he adds, whereas Our institutions do not presuppose a supreme being that their preservation does. Wait, what did he say? Whereas our institutions do not presuppose a supreme being, their preservation does. And on that basis, Barnes reasons that liberal democracy must preserve what it cannot itself generate, and it must do this without jeopardizing the private character of religion. And I would say that liberal democracy has not preserved what it cannot itself generate. I would say that they're trying to, this evolution is not preserving, it's by teaching evolution in schools and not teaching religion. They're not preserving the religion. It's jeopardizing the private character of religion. When you leave school, most kids today don't have a religion and don't practice their religion. Thus, Everson, from Barnes' perspective, wrongly launched an interpretation under which the First Amendment forbid precisely what many men in the first Congress went to such pains to protect. So namely public support of religion. So public support of religion today is nil.